Welcome to the realm of Millenia. Be ye a man or woman. What do you want, dog? A child, a spirit creature, or a demon. Be ye a native migrator, or maybe even an invader into the realm. I say welcome, for I am your host, the Millenia Mailman, and I'll be world building for you long after you've already begun to acclimate and fit in. So go ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy this Finish It Friday. Alright. Errands took a surprisingly long time today, so it is dark. Much better. Yeah, right. Don't destroy my stuff. Yes. Pajama boys out here. Week 22 Devil's Advocate, the hot take is that men versus women debates and all those arguments are the fault of the good, supportive, protective men that gave the world and all the proper affirmations to the women in their lives properly. Because those jealous witches can't be blamed for them emotions they can't control. Now can they? Right? Where on Wednesday, when we got started this discussion, point number one was that the jealous witches with those out of control emotions can't be blamed, and how that basically means no women can be blamed for these men versus women debates. If you want for more information on that, go back to the Wednesday video on February 11th. Then there's the second point of the good men and why you blame those instead of the not so good men. Then there's the third point of supportive men and the last point of protective. We'll see how much we get through today, right? But I went over why humble, you had to blame the humble people and not the unhumble, and then I also described why you blame those good submissive good boys instead of the not so submissive ones. And then, yes, the third one is peasants. The peasantries. You gotta blame those good peasants. Of course, how could I forget that one? The men versus women debates and arguments are the fault of those good peasant boys that gave the world. Because peasants, they're so lowly. The peasants, they know their place. You blame the people who know their place, but you can't have the power to do anything more, because strength is all about how much you work out and how much you put into it. So if they're peasants and they're weak and they have no control, blame the person not putting in the effort to get stronger to fix it. So those good boys who are peasants, you got to blame them. Can't blame nobody else, because the people without the strength are incapable of growing stronger. You can't blame them. And the people with strength but are choosing to use it differently, they're just bad people. They're not good. But those good peasantries, you can always blame the peasants that could be stronger. Right? I skipped that one. So now for the meat and potatoes of today, those supportive and the protectives, where the supportive group is broken down further into the architectures and the rehabilitates, because supportive people are either architectures or rehabilitations. And the last one, the protective category, includes the chivalrous, the army types, and the knights. All right, the chivalrous, the army types, and the knights captivates the three categories of what is considered protective man. And then you have the architecture and the rehabilitators that are ultimately the what can be considered the supportive man. And of course, I will be going over the rebuttals as well in order to further disseminate exactly why those get blamed instead of all the others. But yes, week 22 Devil's Advocate, the men versus women debates and arguments are the fault of good, supportive, protective men that gave the world and affirmations to the women in their lives properly.
because the jealous, which is, can't be blamed for those out of control emotions. Now can they? So again, the first point just means that you can't blame women, so leave them out your mouth, leave them out your face. The second point explained why you can only consider all the good men for the blaming aspect. And here, the third one that I'm gonna start getting into is supportive. Why we blame the supportive people instead of the not so supportive people, right? So supportive, the architecture and rehabilitators. Let's dive into architecture. What is architecture? We got architects, we got architecture. The architectures are the buildings, the stability, right? The support structures. So supportive, when we're talking about supportive men, we're talking about those men with the actual structure and the stability of architecture, right? Because if we're talking about the unstable man, which are we really pointing fingers and blaming them for the debates when they're not even stable enough to have the conversation? Can we really blame them for them? No, you got to blame the structured men. Those people capable of being something to be judged, right? If a house is getting foreclosed for terrible maintenance and whatnot, you blame the people living in it. You don't blame the house that was at some point good. You got to blame the people who ruined it. So we blame the architecture and the architects because the men are relatively those two categories. Supportive men fall under that category. If the architecture is faulty, the house will be terrible. Even if at some point it was approved of, it sold that hallucination that it's a good house. If it comes crumbling down on the first windy day instead of 50 years later, that's poor architecture. That's a terrible architect who did that. It was a terrible people who set it up and structured it. No one else's fault except the house, right? So we got the supportive men, architecture, because there is the stigma and stereotype that men are supposed to be the backbone, he's my bedrock, he's my rock, he's my solid figure. Oh, I love him so much, right? You gotta blame that person. I'm sorry. It sounds deplorable. It sounds insidious. It sounds like a double standard. But hey, we're not pointing at the two sides. We're pointing at the one side right now. And that's the men, right? The men who are architecture, right? Because that's what you are. If you are a confident, capable man, and you have standards, goals, ambitions, particular, that means you are the structure. You're the structure in the relationship. You're the structure of the conversation. You hold structure and expectations and standards in a conversation, such as these debates and arguments about men versus women. The supportive men are the structure, right? You guys structured the conversation. You guys are basically holding it hostage, holding it in order, holding it to a standard. It's your guys' fault. All you guys who are the structural support, holding this debate and argument like a central pillar so it goes nowhere. It's nope. We're talking about this and we're leaving it here until we're done. The men who are supportive are the ones to blame. Excuse me. The supportive men are the ones to be blamed for these debates and arguments. Because if you weren't the role models and the expectations, there wouldn't be much complaining to be done here, right? But that being said, you can be a supportive man and not be of any assistance to anyone. Because there are plenty of central bearing walls and stuff. What is it? No. There are
and a lot of architecture that, give me one moment. You know what? Pause the film.